I haven't gone live for a long time because I've had such awesome guests on my podcast. And the reason I go live is that I don't have a guest on my podcast. I don't know if you call that. I don't always know how live works at the beginning. I'm just improving today anyway. So I haven't gone live for a while because I've had great guests on my podcast. And usually I do this live to add to my podcast episodes. And so today I'll probably put this up later today, and then I'll figure out next week. What I am interested in talking about today, and if anybody's watching this live, please feel free to put some comments in the comment box and I'll address them as I see them. I am really curious about what I'm starting to think of as leadership improv. And what that is coming into a conversation or a situation or a live like this without an agenda or even a plan and just seeing what happens. I have a friend in Chicago, Tony, who has taken improv classes so that he can get better at listening. I think that's what those classes would help with. Because if you're a comedy improv person, you really have to be aware of what's going on. You have to listen so that you can jump off of what somebody else just said and add to it. I think so often we get into the space of scripting and agendas and making sure our heads are down on the piece of paper in front of us that we very rarely practice the art of listening and being present. I think about the way that I have had the most, I'll call it my own success because I'm not really sure if the audience feels the same way I do, but the times when I feel the most joyful in my work are when I go off the script, when I kind of improv. I have slides, I do a lot of preparation, yet my joy comes in interacting with whoever happens to be listening. So this week I had two opportunities to get in front of groups of people again. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, those are the times that I love, and the times that I'm not always in love with are the business development to get those times when I get to be in front of people. And this week I had a chance to experience being with my audience or my client. I get another chance next week. And I'm asking the universe these days not for more money or more engagements, but more momentum. Because I think for me, what I would love is a flow where, you know how they tell you in sales that you have to fill your pipeline so that everything can continue to be in flow. I have not been operating that way. I've been operating in, I've been calling it feast or famine, and I'm more interested in a steady diet of engagements. And so I'm asking the universe a little bit differently these days. Please bring me momentum. And so today I just wanted to kind of riff with you a little bit. And I thought for the purpose of, not starting with just no idea, I wanted to use this book that you might know if you've been following me at all, has become really important to me, The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin is my new muse and has really helped me get out of my head and more into my heart. Step into that creativity, which we all have, but sometimes we deny. I'll just speak for myself. I deny, and I think I have to do it a certain way or a different way. And so riffing isn't cool, isn't the way you're supposed to do things. You're supposed to have an agenda and supposed to have the vision and then work toward the goal. I know that. I know. And I've stopped fighting with what's right for me. So this book, I thought today I would just kind of open the book randomly and see if there's something that jumps out and use that as a conversation starter. So if you're watching live, feel free to jump in. If you're watching later, put a comment in the chat about what you heard, and we'll just go from there. So I've just opened it up, and page 43, a practice is the embodiment of an approach to a concept. A practice is the embodiment of an approach to a concept. So when I read that, I think about what we do over and over again. I would call that a practice. It's something that we get better at. I asked earlier about momentum. I want more momentum. Something that happens over a regular interval. I would call that a practice. It could be, in my case right now, as I'm painting, it's becoming a practice when I paint on a regular basis. I have been stepping into the home office studio sometimes when I don't feel like it, just to put some paint on a canvas or just to put some texture on a canvas. And I find that I get into the flow once I step into the room. And sometimes I just don't feel it, so I don't do it. But I will say that the practice of putting something on a canvas or a piece of paper has become really crucial to my own well-being and my own success. So he says a practice is the embodiment of an approach to a concept. So if we break that down, a concept is an idea. Maybe it isn't fleshed out yet. And he says a practice is the embodiment. So it's what happens in, almost in real life, the embodiment of an approach to a concept. So maybe the concept is something unfamiliar, new to me. And if I can just step in the room and allow that process to work, there will be a product. I'll give you an example. Last night actually, I'm working on a painting right now for an organization that's asked me to donate a painting for their fundraiser, which I'm very honored to do. And I know kind of what elements I want to show up in this painting, but I have no idea how they're going to get there, or I don't even know what I want to do to allow that to come out on the other side. So last night I tried something completely different, and I got the canvas full of texture, paste, and let it dry, and then I painted another layer over it really lightly. And this morning I went to that dry canvas and I just poured water and paint on it and let it run. And I went, that's kind of cool. So I tried something else, something new, because in my mind I want this painting to be kind of flowy. I want it to have something that just feels, when you look at it, like, oh, I want people to feel that flowiness. So I just poured water and paint and let it flow. And I went, oh, that's cool. Now, the first time I tried it, I learned some things, like you can't let the water sit on the canvas for too long because it takes off the paint that was already there, and you get back to the underneath layer that I don't want, because the underneath layer looks orange. And so I have to figure that piece out once it dries. But I love that practice, right? The practice is the embodiment of an approach to a concept. So the concept for me is really broad. It's a feeling more than like how it's going to look on the canvas. It's a feeling I want people to have when they look at it. So that's the concept. And the practice is just trying things and going, yeah, no, not that. And I'm learning with painting. It's so fun because you can just paint over the canvas. And sometimes I have a tendency to overwork the canvas. So I'll get something I really like and then I'll go, oh yeah, more of that. And then I put more paint on it and then it just gets heavy and dark and not what I thought I wanted. So then I just paint white all over it and start over again. So some of my paintings have several layers because that's the mistake layer. And that's what I find to be really fun and very much a metaphor for life, if you think about it like that. So a practice is the embodiment of an approach to a concept. I really like that idea, that prompt. So that was one. Let's see what else we can come up with here. Going to another page randomly. I don't know. Let's see. Here's one. Listening, then, is not just awareness. It's freedom from accepted limitations. Okay, I got to say that again. Listening, then, is not just awareness. It's freedom from accepted limitations. How many of us have accepted limitations? Oh my gosh, I have. I've been accepting a lot of limitations and telling myself lies. Like, here's an example. Nobody listens to my podcast. That's a lie, and it's an accepted limitation. Nobody listens to my podcast. What's the use? Why should I keep doing it? Blah, 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 blah. I tell myself all these stories. It's not true, because the last two, well, two of the last four maybe, interviews I had were because somebody listened to an interview before that and said, I want to know you. I want to get to be on your podcast. So two of the guests I had would never have happened if they hadn't listened to a previous episode. So I can't say that. I can't say nobody listens, because maybe it's the right people are listening. Maybe I have to just shift the way I'm coming into the world and say, hey, universe, bring the right people to me. And then if I get more specific about what I actually desire, it starts showing up. So listening is not just awareness. Because if I'm aware of stuff, I can be mad at what's showing up. Nobody's showing up, or the wrong people are showing up, or whatever. I could make up a story about it. But listening is not just awareness, it's freedom from accepted limitations. Think about how you would listen differently if you got rid of your expectations and limitations. Accepted limitations. Freedom. I would listen for what I already believe in my limited awareness, if that's what I did, if that's what I thought listening was. I have to listen, and then I'll hear what I'm listening for, and then I can be right about what I thought was going to happen. But he's saying here that listening is freedom from accepted limitations. Freedom from accepted limitations. Because if I'm listening to connect or to learn something, I would have to transcend my own accepted limitations, wouldn't I? And then I'll hear things I would never have heard if I'd been listening through a narrow lens. Ooh, I like that one, Rick. It's so good. So that was from a chapter called Listening, right? That would make sense. And they're short little chapters, maybe 1 or 2 pages. One chapter is called The Opposite is True. One chapter is called Rules. Oh my gosh, let's jump into that one. I've been a person who follows rules, and to my detriment, it's prevented me from actually experiencing a lot of things because I've been such a rule follower. So let's see what he says about rules. I'm going to cough just a second. I'm going to put you on mute for just a second, and I'm going to cough. Actually not. Live, that's what happens when we go live. I can't even mute. Sorry. Jeez, that's live, you guys. Okay, here. Rules. Try to get the frog out of my throat. Rules direct us to average behaviors. Ooh, this is good. Rules direct us to average behaviors. If we're aiming to create works that are exceptional, most rules don't apply. Average is nothing to aspire to. Ooh, the goal is not to fit in. Oh boy. Consider that, listeners. The goal is not to fit in. When we are in our our creativity, when we're in our unique us, it's not about fitting in. Rules direct us to average behaviors. Wow. If we're aiming to create works that are exceptional, most rules don't apply. Average is nothing to aspire to. Oh, I think about school and how, how do we grade people? A is above average. No, A is what? Excellent. B is above average. C is average. D is below average. And F is failing. And I guess if we strove to be average, we'd just have C students and everybody would be the same. Some people aspire to greatness and end up at C because they see things differently. I remember people, probably the most creative people I knew growing up in school were the C students, because they were out there being themselves. They weren't looking at the rules and trying to do what the test told them to do. I don't think grades in school have anything to do with creativity, because I was an A student pretty much, didn't learn anything and didn't have any fun and wasn't creative because rules don't allow creativity. So now that I'm thinking about that, I don't think the grading system at school has anything to do with success or anything to do with creativity or anything to do with, who's going to have the best job when they get out of school. So maybe there's a way to rethink that whole grading system. Rules direct us to average behaviors. And I don't, man, average is not it, right? It's not. Thank you, Kelly, for agreeing with that. Kelly's listening. I love that. The goal is not to fit in. And it's funny that Kelly would show up here because Kelly is my friend who is not a rule follower. And we laugh about it a lot because she's so free spirited and I am such a rule follower, or have been, right? Have been. And so we can laugh about it. And I notice when I get stuck, it's because, oh, it's a rule that I don't need to follow anymore. And then Kelly will help me see it differently. And I really love that. Well, many things I love about our friendship. So he says here, instead of sounding like others, value your own voice. Develop it. Cherish it. And that's a big deal, isn't it? I mean, for people who have been trying to follow the rules, I'll speak for myself. Didn't know what my voice even sounded like in some cases. I didn't know what I really believed. I didn't know. Right now I can think back on specific times when I thought, well, that sounds good. Well, that sounds good. I was listening to everybody else and I could find value in everybody's opinion, so I never had an opinion. I was just floating in the wind, and the wind would change all the time and I would change with the wind. Kelly says, that's why I'm loving your creativity and your painting. You are being so free there. Yes, yes. Andrea, thanks. You'll buy a piece. Yay. This is so great. Andrea's a friend from college. She was my ARA, assistant RA. And you went on to be an RA, Andrea, for another friend of ours, Sarah, who says hi, by the way. I love all these connections. So it's not true nobody listens, because here we are having a conversation that is in the improv space where we're creating this as we go. And yeah, the painting, Kelly, has been really fascinating for me because over and over and over again, I see that when I try to follow the rules, I get frustrated and upset because it doesn't look like the person who I was copying because that was an original to that person. And so if I'm learning nothing else in this whole journey, it's that creativity is the key to creating art. And I was going to say this in a different way. There will be a possibility that a large group of people will not like the certain style or a certain painting. And that's kind of the point, that you find your tribe, you find your people, you create something that is for yourself. Rick will tell us that. Rick says all the time, create for yourself. Create something you love, because otherwise you're creating it in a commercial setting and not a creative one. Andrea says, my daughter started to paint when she was 3 and has an MFA degree. Andrea, your daughter's work is amazing. I've followed and she does very realistic drawings and paintings, and I love that style, and it's really good. Dawn says, I love that creativity is helping you learn how to break the rules. Dawn, you're another friend of mine who's probably a rule breaker. And I made a painting for Dawn, and even since I made the one for you, Dawn, that at the moment I made it for you was where I was in my creative journey. I think I'm venturing out beyond that as well. So that's kind of neat. Everything's sort of fluid and flexible and growing, and that's what I'm seeing in my art. Kelly, before you got on here, I was talking about what I'd done this morning when I just poured watered down paint on a canvas and watched it flow into each other, and the colors kind of went together. It wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I tried that, because I thought the color would stay. I poured white and I thought it would stay white, and it didn't. It took on the green and the blue that was already on the canvas. I should have thought of that, but the process of experimenting with it was really fun. And so right now I'm kind of excited to get home and see how it will dry, because when I left, it was pooled. It was really wet paint because it was just poured on. But that's been so much fun. And yeah, Dawn, to your point about breaking the rules in art, I'm sure there are rules in art. I'm sure that's why your daughter has an MFA degree, Andrea, because they teach you how to do it, or teach you techniques and things like that I didn't learn, and I am just experimenting with. It's so funny because I've never been a person who likes to get her hands dirty. As a kid, I never liked to get my hands dirty. And I have had paint under my fingernails and hard to get it out. I go to work and I go speak at places and I have dirty fingernails, and I kind of think about that sometimes, and I wonder if they're judging me. And I remember once I looked down a month or so ago and I went, oh. And so I told the group, I said, here's the deal. I just looked down at my fingernails. I want you to know this is why, blah, blah, blah. Because that's allowing me to be in the moment, to be real, which is exactly the point of this conversation and the podcast. And that has been so refreshing for me because it breaks a rule and it shows a connection, which is the thing that I want more than anything: connection, communication, and collaboration. Dawn says, hoping every painting is a new experience. It is. It is. I've been thinking lately that leaning into creativity is balance I need for my super cerebral intellectual mind, accessing different parts of the brain. Yes, Dawn, I'll tell you from my experience, maybe just a little tiny bit ahead of you in that, because I've been in that cerebral part too. It is so freeing and addicting. And I'm watching your journey, Dawn, with your hiking and being in nature and witnessing things that force you to slow down. And I'm enjoying that journey with you too. And the way that we can show up in our lives, if we show up authentically and real, that connects. It connects with your certain group of people. There will be those in the audience of whatever it is you're doing, your audience of your family, your audience of your friends, whatever, who will judge that, because that's part of the journey. I used to be Miss Judgy Pants. I still fall into that once in a great while, but it doesn't feel good to me anymore. So I just can't do that anymore. Melissa, loving this awareness, or love this awareness you're bringing to your awesomeness. Oh, Melissa, some of whatever our awesomeness might, however it might occur to someone else, you guys, occurs because of the listening of the people in your space. And so if you have a group of people in your life who will, this is going to sound weird grammatically, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you have a group of people who will listen you powerful, listen you powerful. In their listening, your communicating becomes more authentic, becomes more real. You have the ability to break those rules with people who will listen you powerful. And that's such an important part of this whole journey of creativity. Dawn says, my creativity is often in building new spaces and creating. Dawn, I'm literally new spaces. So Dawn does work that actually brings new buildings to a community. And you do that, and you do that with your new home or your home that's been renovated, and building physical new spaces. I love that. Dawn says, I love your just being open and sharing, such as the fingernails. Just put it out there on the table if you're worried about it. In that, you share and you also empower others. We do, everyone. Everyone, we do. Trying to be something you're not, or trying to be something that others will approve of, or I don't know. I was going to say others will like. I don't even think it's that anymore. I spoke at a group on Tuesday of this week, and I looked down, and I need a pedicure really badly. My toenails have grown out, and I wore open-toed shoes because it was hot and I wanted to. And I said that to them. And I said, you might not have even noticed that I need a pedicure. My toenails look terrible. I just want you to know that I wore open-toed shoes in spite of the fact. And this is what I want to encourage the world to do, to be you. Don't be offensive, but be you, because as you said, you allow others to do that same thing. That's what Marianne Williamson said, right? Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. And we don't think we can own our greatness, because what will happen? Will I shine too brightly for someone else? And if that happens, they can maybe get some sunglasses. Melissa, if anyone hasn't taken the Get Real course, it will listen you forward. Finding your community is life-changing. Yes, Real Me Intensive course is a 6-week, 2 hours a week live course with 9 other people that will challenge you and enhance you. Melissa is a graduate of that, and her life just shifted because she took that chance. She took that risk. She got outside her comfort zone and joined our cohort. So I would love to have anybody who wants to take a look at that. Andrea, it also involves people in your story. Yes, 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 yes. We impact people all the time, don't we? We impact people whether we mean to or not. And as we change and shift and grow and learn and expand, it will have an effect on the people in our lives. We talked about that, I think it was yesterday, Wednesday. I was with one group of leaders for one whole day, and we talked about how it can be difficult to grow when people around you aren't, because it might occur that you are leaving them. And in some cases, maybe you need to say something like, hey, I'm going in this direction, see ya. I don't know that you always need to do that, because energetically things will sort of just take care of themselves if you stay on your journey, stay on in your space. And if your true desire, like mine, is to connect, then you have conversations even when it's difficult. And you share your journey, share where you are, share your authenticity. You know, I am expanding. I'm feeling these things. I really want to talk about it. I get that if it affects you in a way that scares you, let's talk about it. I would love if people could do that. And I love if I can help in a way, give some role playing ideas, because I love role playing, those kinds of things. So thanks, you guys. This has been 26 minutes I didn't expect, and I love it. I love it. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for being part of the conversation. And I'll put this up on my podcast, and it'll come out tonight. And then next week, we'll take care of next week. So this will be episode number 178 in Circle Up and Get Real. So thanks, everybody, for being with me. Please think about how you in your own life can actually get real. And then take a chance, take a risk. Be you. Thanks, Andrea and Kelly and Melissa and Dawn. This is so fun to be with you. You are so important to me, and I'm hopeful. No, that's not done. I don't want to say it like that. I'm excited that I get to share you and this conversation with whoever else listens to this podcast. So thanks, everybody. Take care. Get real. Bye.